I would put money on it that somewhere along the line, you have been told that if you could just learn to communicate better by using I statements or staying calm or validating the other person, choosing your words more carefully, then your relationships would finally feel easier. And that belief completely makes sense because communication is visible. It feels actionable and controllable. But there is a problem. Communication skills are often used as a substitute for what is really underneath, and that is emotional maturity. The truth is that communication doesn't start with words. It starts with what's happening inside of us. Now, for emphasis, I want to explain this with a real-life example. So imagine an adult daughter who has done so much work on herself. She's learned how to communicate thoughtfully. She uses all the right statements. She stays calm during her conversations. She chooses her words carefully, and she's trying to have a conversation with her mother. So she might say something like, "Hey mom, when you cancel plans last minute, I feel hurt and disconnected, and I'm not trying to blame you. I just want you to understand what's going on for me, so maybe we could come up with some solutions together." On paper, that is excellent communication. She explained how she felt, she expressed her needs, she took accountability, removed blame. But her mother, who has low emotional capacity, doesn't actually hear curiosity and vulnerability. Instead, she hears, "I'm a bad mother, I'm being criticized, I'm not enough." And because she can't tolerate those feelings, she reacts saying, "I can never do anything right. You're too sensitive. Why are you always attacking me?" And before you know it, the entire conversation is no longer about the original issue at all. It is now turned into defense and guilt and shutting the daughter down. And the daughter walks away thinking, "Man, I said everything perfectly. I stayed calm, I did everything I was supposed to, and yet it still failed." This conversation failed not because she communicated poorly, but because her mother did not have the emotional capacity to stay present and reflective or accountable in the moment. Now, that doesn't mean that the mom is a bad person or that she's narcissistic or that she's intentionally harmful, but it does mean that she lacks emotional capacity. And when emotional capacity is low, communication, no matter how skilled or well-intentioned, is always going to feel like you're hitting a brick wall because communication becomes about self-protection, not about understanding. This is why people say things like, "I communicated perfectly and it still blew up in my face." Now, here's the point I want you to hold on to throughout all of this video. Communication skills do not create safety. Emotional capacity does. Communication skills express what's already there. They don't override the nervous system and what's happening underneath. And this is supported across so many different theories: attachment theory, nervous system research, and relationship studies. There is no communication script on earth that will help communication when the body is dysregulated, because our ability to access empathy, to listen with curiosity, and to offer internal reflection goes completely offline when we don't have emotional maturity. So, let's talk about why communication skills fail even when people are genuinely trying. This is myth number one. People believe that if they just stay calm and kind enough, the other person will finally hear them. But calm language does not bypass emotional immaturity. So an example of this would be you say very thoughtfully, "Hey, when this happens, I feel disconnected and I'd really like more consistency." But the other person hears, "I'm failing, I'm being criticized, I'm not enough," and suddenly they get defensive, they're shut down or they start attacking you. And it's not because you communicated poorly, it's because their nervous system experienced a threat. You cannot communicate your way out of someone else's dysregulation. And I want you to remember that. Myth number 2 is if I use all the right tools, everything's going to be fine. Yes, tools are helpful, but tools without emotional capacity are just scripts at best and weapons at worst. Here's what I mean. Someone can learn reflective listening and say, I can see and hear that you're upset, but there's no curiosity, there's no emotional presence, there's no accountability. So the words are technically correct, but they're emotionally hollow. This is why people say they say the right things, but nothing actually changes, because tools don't create emotional maturity. They just reveal whether it's there or not. Research on emotional regulation shows that reflective capacity will always collapse under stress when it hasn't been properly developed. So the tools inevitably disappear the moment things get hard. And false solution number 3, if I do this work, others are going to meet me there. This one is subtle and it can be painful. We've been programmed to believe that if we have grown, if we learn to communicate well enough, if we are able to regulate ourselves, that other people around us are going to rise to that level. It's the be the example or set the example adage. And, sometimes they do, but often they don't. And this is where resentment starts to build, because emotional maturity is unfortunately not contagious. It's not a be the example kind of scenario. You can't drag someone into emotional capacity through your good communication. You can invite, you can model, you can motivate, but you cannot compensate for something that isn't there. But that is why some relationships feel exhausting, even when you're doing everything right. So let's talk about what communication skills can't do. Communication skills cannot regulate someone's nervous system. They can't create accountability where none exist. It can't replace emotional awareness, can't force repair. They also can't make an emotionally immature person tolerate discomfort, and discomfort is where growth lives. If someone avoids the emotional discomfort often present in difficult situations or difficult conversations, communication is always going to hit a wall. Emotional capacity has to come first. So what actually makes communication work? Emotional capacity. Now, so that we're on the same page about what emotional capacity is, let's define it together. It includes awareness of your internal states, nervous system regulation, responsibility for your own emotions, tolerance for discomfort, and a willingness to repair. When these qualities are present, communication is relatively simple. It might not be perfect, but it's safe and workable and effective. And to drive this point home, I want to give you a couple examples. So when you have emotional maturity, instead of you're always attacking me, that becomes I'm feeling defensive right now and I just need a minute. Or instead of this is all your fault, now you start to hear I'm upset and I want to understand what happened there. The shift doesn't come from better wording, even though it is better wording, but it comes from the internal regulation and the responsibility that belongs to the person voicing the words. This is why emotionally mature communication often sounds less impressive, but it feels so much safer. If learning to communicate better has not been working for you, I want you to know it doesn't mean that you're a failure. It's just information pointing you towards what actually needs development. So here are some questions that you can ask yourself. Can I stay present when things are uncomfortable? Can I hear something impactful without shutting down or attacking others? Can I repair conflict without needing to defend myself? And can I take responsibility for my own internal experience? If you answered no to any of those questions, it's just because those are emotional skills, not just communication tricks. Communication skills are not useless. In fact, I myself teach communication skills, but they are not foundational. They rest on top of something deeper, and that is emotional capacity. And when emotional maturity and capacity develops, communication naturally stops feeling like work, and conversations don't need to be managed so carefully. Communication becomes clearer, easier, more honest, grounded, and safer. And conversations begin to move, adjust, and repair more naturally. And seeing that clearly can change how much you ask of certain relationships and how much you even ask of yourself. Because every relationship begins with the one you have with yourself. And recognizing that is where real change starts.